Closing the Loop is unique because the stories are unique. The people are just ordinary people like the rest of us. They've survived the recession. In some cases, they've survived diseases, family tragedies, and they've learned a few things along the way, including the fact that change is the only real constant, and also that all of us are much stronger than we think we are, and that we know that we are until we're tested by something that requires us to be strong. I've contributed to public radio for 20 years in Orlando and the last 12 in Jacksonville. I pitched Closing the Loop to Scott Kim, whom I knew from Orlando and was at the time the news director at WJCT FM, the public radio affiliate in Jacksonville. And he liked the idea. At first, it was really talking about how people were coping with the recession. This was 2011, and Jacksonville was very much in the height of the recession, or the depths of the recession. How people were coping with it, how people were adapting. They were changing careers, they were changing things about their lives in general. But it shifted much more to how people were coping with change, because there were a lot of good things that came out of the recession. People went into careers that they had always wanted to do, and then all of a sudden, when their other career might have been no longer available, at least temporarily, they finally had the opportunity to do what they had always wanted to do. And so that became something that everybody was potentially an interview for Closing the Loop. And that's what people find interesting about it now, I've been told. Mary Grace's lifestyle is, in a nutshell, to live each day to its fullest.
I naturally became a spiritual director. I just didn't call it that.
She kept her day job as a graphic designer and communications professional, but began to work on a part-time basis for several reasons.
I started allowing myself to work part-time so that I had time to do the ministry and do the training for spiritual direction, and also to keep my health well. I knew that I needed to keep my stress level down. To do that, I needed to work less hours.
The interviews are easy. I always look forward to doing the interviews. Just talking with people and finding out things about them is always fun. And I think I've learned a few things about how to get them to talk about what's most interesting and what people will want to see. The work is in the editing. That takes several hours each one to do. Crafting the story, the introduction and the arc of it and the close, and also working on the audio engineering part of it to make sure that it sounds right. There's no shortcut to it either, is one thing that I've learned about producing the segments. Early each weekday morning, Willie Freeman comes to his security job at the parking garage of a large office building in downtown Jacksonville and greets the people who drive in. How he got there and what he does when he gets off the security job in mid-afternoon are a 30-year story.
I moved here in the latter part of 1979 from a small town called Swainsboro, Georgia. My wife now, who was my girlfriend, we came here because I had relatives here and I never lived around my mother. My mother didn't raise me, my grandparents did. I moved here so I could be around my mother.
I'm always asked, where do you find these people? I used to tell people at first, well, if I told you I'd have to kill you, but that actually, if that was ever funny, it certainly wasn't funny after the first couple of times I did it. But I mean, look, Jacksonville is not the Australian outback. Everywhere you look, there are people. So they used to say about New York City, there are 8 million stories in the naked city. Well, there's only maybe about 800,000 in Northeast Florida, but there's no shortage of interesting stories. The secret is learning how to determine whether somebody has something that other people are going to want to hear, and whether they themselves have learned something from it. Somebody who hasn't had profound changes in themselves doesn't make for as interesting a story as the best of the Closing the Loop segments. In the end, you get the people to interview by referral, and that's why I want to take Closing the Loop national. I've lived all over the country. I'm a fourth generation New York City native, but I grew up in northern New Jersey. I went to college in Boston. I lived in California for 9 years, and I've been in Florida, in the Orlando area, and Jacksonville, St. Augustine for about 30 years. But I have family members all over the country and outside of the country. I have friends, and I've traveled extensively. So my referral base, my contact base, is nationwide. And now that I've learned how to find the people, I can do that through my contact base across the country. It took several trips to Florida from England before Vanessa Cunningham came here to stay.
My first experience coming to the States was back in 1986. I came for a year with a boyfriend, and we came to work as a housekeeper and butler for 3 different people over the course of a year. It was very enlightening. I would be the one to cook all the meals and do the housework, and he would drive the people that we worked for where they needed to go, or I did most of the work.
She didn't stay long, though, not that time.
I was homesick, but I always wanted to come back, and my father lived here. He emigrated in 1979 with his wife. They built a British pub here in St. Augustine, and that.
Frank Green's life is dedicated to the craft of writing fiction. Born and raised in Jacksonville, Frank went to the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee.
When I was in college, I took a creative writing course with the editor of the Sewanee Review. He said that I could be a good writer. And I'd always loved to read and thought about writing. And then I got a scholarship, a work scholarship. My father got cancer and had to go through operations, and I thought I needed to leave school and help with the family. And I got a call from the director of development at Sewanee who said, you're too far into your education, you don't want to leave now.
The basic premise that change is the constant and that we can adapt to it is not unique to Northeast Florida. It's not unique to Florida, but I think that in many respects it is unique to America, because in this country more than any place else, we feel that we can reinvent ourselves. We can rewrite our story. We can acquire new skills, and we can become whatever we need to be to not just thrive in a changing world, but to be happy. I mean, the American dream is the pursuit of happiness, and we will do, and we feel that we can do whatever is needed to pursue happiness. And that I think ultimately is what Closing the Loop is all about.